Thanks for joining the Move podcast, motivating others virtually every day. Today, we're going to talk about youth sports and the effect it has on kids. Let's get it. Well, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's having a wonderful start to their week. It's really cold down here. In fact, they actually had excused absences at school. I say really cold. It's really cold for here. I think when I woke up, it was 35. And down here, they act like it's the polar apocalypse. So you can definitely tell they're not used to it. And we got excused absences, and they're encouraging you to stay inside. They're talking about frostbite. Yeah, it's wild. But anyways, I hope everybody out there is having a wonderful start to their week. It is now February. It's February 2nd. We're only a few days away from my son's 10th birthday, so we're moving right along through the year. Let's get to it. It's youth sports. So before I get started, I'm going to frame this up. So youth sports is something I've been involved with for a number of years, over a decade, well over a decade. I've coached several years of football, basketball, baseball, soccer. I've done t-ball. I've reffed. I've been an umpire. There's not a whole lot of untouched surfaces when it comes to youth sports and myself. I've been very involved with youth sports for a number of years. Since I was 20 years old, I'm now, I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm getting older now. But since I was 20 is when I started. And the landscape has completely changed just since I was involved in it. One of the biggest issues is parents. And I talk a lot on here about parenting and how to parent our kids and just some tips and tricks to pass along to you guys, things that worked for me that I've noticed in this day and age. And so other people can try to apply those same things. But parents, they're hard. They were hard when I started. Parents are very, very difficult. They set unrealistic expectations on their kids, and they also pass that on to the coach. They want their kid to be this type of player with this type of playing time. They want plays drawn up this certain way. And then you get to practice into the game, and you can tell these parents don't even work with their kids. They're just hoping and praying that their kid is good, and they want their kid to be in the limelight, yet they don't put in the work outside of practice. And you can tell as a coach, my coaches out there, you'll know exactly. You can tell the kids that, especially when you're coaching youth sports, there's a massive difference between a kid that's working on it versus a kid that's not working on it. You can see it more in a youth sport than you can any other level, in my opinion. So you have these parents that just are hounding these coaches. There was one year in basketball, I had this parent just thought it was okay to come over to my bench during my games. And some of you guys that know me, that have been around, I'm a very intense coach. I'm very hard. I'm no BS. I'm very competitive. I play to win. I coach to win. I teach the kids to win. And I had this parent that thought it was okay to come to my bench in the middle of a game. And so I had to, in the middle of the game, kick him off the bench and had to have that little altercation. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, get out of here. Like, if you want to go coach your own team. But get out of here. This is my team. We're going to do things my way here. But parents are a massive problem to these kids these days. And these refs that just get absolutely, and I know it's coming from me, but when you're a coach, you should be able to heckle the ref a little bit. It's part of your job. But as a parent, heckle an official, whether you agree or disagree with the call, it's not your role. And it's hard to find refs nowadays, especially in basketball and football. Those two sports, it's extremely hard in youth sports to find officials, because officials get sick and tired of it. There was officials back where I moved from, and they would literally have to get security to go to their car because they had parents trying to follow them to the parking lot to have physical altercations with them. And that's just uncalled for. But that's the culture that we have around youth sports. And I don't really remember in the beginning it being that bad. I think parents have always kind of heckled officials to an extent, right? Like, you're gonna support your kid, but to the extent that we have nowadays, where you see it year in and year out now, where officials are being physically assaulted, extremely verbally abused, also borderline humiliated. And then we wonder why we can't find good officials and good referees. Well, a lot of them they're just not going to do it. And, what's the point? I mean, you're making $20 a game, $40 a game. You're not making much. I mean, it's not bad for some side cash if you can get into a tournament, but at the end of the day, you're just not making a whole lot of money, and especially to put up with that. And then you get to the kids, because this all passes down to the kids. One of my number one rules on any of my teams is, I'll handle the officials. I better never see you throw your hands up. I don't want to see you look at an official a certain way. Don't slam the ball. I will handle the officials. You play the game. You play the game the way we teach you to play the game. You stay disciplined. I will handle. If there's a questionable call, that's my job. It is not your job as a player to sit there and try to heckle the official. And if you broke that rule, you'd sit on the bench. It'd just be that simple. Then the next practice was going to be absolute hell for you, since you thought you were above the team and you thought you were somebody you're not. And I was very, very strict on that. We're not going to disrespect these people out here. And I had numerous, just in my own experience, just my own small window of experience, I had several times where parents would just absolutely go after the officials. And as the coach, that's embarrassing. And it got to the point in the beginning of the season, I would hold my parent meeting and I would make them sign a contract. And in that contract, it was how we're going to conduct ourselves on game day. Also, you're not going to get a hold of me within 24 hours after any type of game. You're not going to run on emotion. If you have something, a concern or a question to come, you want to talk about, you need to wait 24 hours, then come talk to me about it. We're not going to talk about it right after the game. You need to go calm down, think about it, sleep on it, then we can have a conversation. But I had to set that contract in place. I didn't in the beginning, but throughout the years, I ended up having to come up with this contract. And, it helped tremendously because parents knew walking into it kind of what I stood for, what I was about, and what I was going to put up with. But it was sad that I even got to that point that I had to, and it had nothing to do with the kids, had everything to do with the parents. When I see the landscape of like college sports where there's this NIL just running rampant, and old, I guess you call it the old days, you'd go and you'd commit to a school when you'd have to sit there for a year or two, and you'd have to wait for the guy in front of you to graduate, and then you'd get your opportunity. Nowadays, it's all about how much you're going to pay me and when can I play. How much you're going to pay me, when can I play? Oh, I'm leaving, I'm not playing enough. What are you teaching these kids? Like, where's the adversity? Where's the discipline? Where's the pushing past things? Where's the doing things you don't want to do? Where is that? Because those are all skills that you must possess later in life. And as a child and in the youth, you should be molding these skills and sharpening these tools up. You shouldn't be bypassing them. You can't bank on, oh, well, when I'm older, I'll figure that part out. No, when you're older, by that point, you're late. You missed the bus. Now you're being passed by people your age because you don't have what it takes and they do. I used to be a huge, huge advocate to play sports, and it had nothing to do with playing the sport. It had everything to do with what came from playing the sport, the lessons that you were taught playing the sport, how to be a good teammate, how to be disciplined, how to show up, how to put out effort. What is effort? What is accountability? How do you be accountable to not just yourself, but people around you? How do you may not like all your teammates, but how do you still coexist with people you don't like and still go after a common goal? Like, these are all life skills. And my favorite life skill is sometimes you can bring your A game, you can prep the best you can, and sometimes somebody's just better than you. And that's real life. Sometimes somebody's just better than you at something. That's just what it is. As long as you try your best day in and day out, and you're putting in the effort, shake their hand, look them in the eye and say, good game. That's the way life works. Sometimes somebody is just better than you at whatever it is. And that's a great, great lesson that can be taught through sports. Sports today doesn't look the same, and coaching sports today doesn't feel the same. And I'm still the same style of coach. I'm a very, very hard-nosed coach, but I have to handle the parents completely different, and the parents have now become a bigger aspect to coaching than it ever has been in the past. I don't know what the answer is to correct it, but I can tell you from my perspective, I think addressing the parents is a good place to start, because these parents, they want to tell their kids how great they are, how wonderful they are, how far they're going to go. And then Then you get to practice, like, yeah, dude, your kid sucks, man. What are you talking about? But then they want to get offended when you tell them that, yeah, your kid's just not quite what you think they are. And they want to get extremely offended over that. Say, that's not my problem. Do you work with your kid? How often do you work with your kid? What's your kid's regimen look like? We live in a time where, kids are full on training at 8, 9 years old. Full on training. They found their sport, they found their passion, and they're all head over heels into it. Obviously not in smaller areas. Smaller areas, they don't have those opportunities, but you get into like a metro area that has all these clinics and these tryouts and these different travel teams, and yeah, it's 8, 9 years old, and it's full swing. If you're a 10-year-old kid and you're not in it, you're late in a metro area. And so we live in that time, and I don't agree with that either. I think kids should be playing multiple sports. Kids that are into sports should be playing multiple sports as they're growing up. The reason being is, if baseball is a prime example. If you find your love is baseball and you're 8 years old and pitching is your thing, so you have a trainer, you play travel ball, it's year round. You have a fall league, a winter league, a spring league, and a summer league with 3-week break in between. Think about how much repetition you've had by the time you're 16 years old. So now you're 8 years in playing year-round ball with a trainer on the side. And what's that repetitive motion in that shoulder look like, in that elbow? So, I think it's extremely healthy to play baseball. I think go play some football. I think go play some basketball to give this shoulder a break. Let's go wear out our legs a little bit. Let's go our shoulders, our arms, whatever, chest. But you're moving and you're relying on different muscle groups depending on the sport you're playing, and it gives that specific area time to heal. That's important, especially when you're growing up. And so I don't agree with it. You see these kids and teenagers getting Tommy John surgery now, and I'm sure that's probably been a thing, but I feel like that was very rare, especially when I was growing up. You didn't really see high school kids getting Tommy John surgery, but when you have 8 to 10 years of just constant throwing on a shoulder, yeah, it's gonna go at some point. It's gonna give, and you're not. And high school coaches, they're relying on their winning record to continue to compete and continue to keep their job, and so they're not going to necessarily be the best at regulating your pitch count, making sure you're staying rested. They're trying to win games. Also, it's hard to find good high school coaches. You rarely come across a good high school coach, and you can tell the good high school coaches really stand out because they absolutely dominate over everybody else. But these other coaches, they're average at best. They're mediocre at best. They're the science teachers. Yeah, I'll do it. And you got some coaches that just do it for the extra $1,000 or $2,000, whatever the case may be. They're not even doing it because they actually genuinely care. And so you have middle school and high school. These coaches, I rarely come across good ones. I go to games. My wife and I, we go to a lot of games, and this is no joke. I'm not going to mention schools or names or anything like that, but I went to a game and this high school coach didn't know how to beat a full court press. This is basketball. He had no clue how to beat he's a high school coach. He's coaching high school basketball, and he had no idea how to beat a full court press. No clue. They just sat there and got annihilated because they could not beat a full court press. Meanwhile, my 6th grade team got excited when people with full court press. I'd call a timeout. I'd tell them it's layup time. We'd go out and we'd hit layups until they got out of it. So how can I teach the 6th grade basketball team how to beat a full court press every day of the week and twice on Sundays, and this high school coach has no clue how to even start? But that's kind of goes to my point. You don't have people in the right spots. Now, I understand you're not going to find a Vince Lombardi to coach high school ball, right? Like, obviously you're not, but there is a competency level that you should probably have going into it. And sometimes I question, like, man, what questions were asked in this little interview that you had to do to become the coach of this team? I'm just curious. If I was a fly on the wall in that room, like, what was really asked in here? Anyway, but it goes to my point, though. It's hard to find coaches, hard to find reps, and all stems back to parenting, the way we teach our kids. And now you got participation ribbons and trophies and medals, and it's like, what are we doing? If you don't win, you don't get anything. It's just that simple, and that's life. You don't win, you don't get anything. It's I don't agree with this all. Everybody gets it's one big family. We all played this sport. Like, no, there's levels. Winning matters. Losing matters. You know, my son's at an age now to where he's going to kickstart. It's going to get competitive where things do matter. Obviously, when they're really young, it doesn't matter as much, right? You're just trying to teach them the fundamentals of being on a team, being a teammate, how to play the sport, things like that. But as they get older, it, things go up a notch. Winning matters, losing matters. There's consequences for losing. You got to teach them how to win, how to lose, preferably more on how to win. And that stuff carries with you for forever. When you win a business deal, you need to know how to carry yourself, how to not to be arrogant, how to still stay humble. You know, teach that from a young age on how to, even when you're on your highest high, how do you bring that sucker back down in the middle? You teach that in youth sports. And it's being lost. It's being lost because we're too busy trying to think our kid's the next Kobe Bryant. And to me, it's an absolute atrocity, to put it nicely. I'm very involved in these sports, but it's very, very agitating to see the way parents handle these kids these days. And there was something to being a kid and sitting on the bench and kind of waiting your turn and developing and progressing. And nowadays it's how many minutes am I getting? How many shots up am I getting? And the whole spectrum has changed. And I feel for these coaches. It's a stress of the job that shouldn't really be there. And I don't think it matters where you live, small town, big, it doesn't matter. I think it's about the same anywhere you go, at least in my experience. I've lived in a very small town where you blink, you miss it. And I've lived in areas that have over 300,000 people, and they were very similar, very similar. So I don't think it really matters what town or city you live in. I think this is just across the country, because I've also been in a couple different states and seen it the same way. Down here in South Florida, it's the same way. These parents think that their kid's supposed to be the next LeBron James, and their kid sucks. Their kid doesn't work on things. Their kid has some natural God-given abilities, but that's where it starts and that's where it stops. Like, they don't put any effort into it. They don't work on it. They're not disciplined. They're not accountable. They don't know how to be a good teammate. But yet their kid's supposed to be the next thing. And it's like, no, like, I don't know what to tell you, but the answer is no. I guess that's what I'll tell you. The only reason I even bring any of this up is there was actually recently an article published on ESPN.com surrounding youth sports and what an atrocity youth sports has become in this country. And it all stems back to what I was saying, the parents. And I read it, I'm like, yeah, it's 100% it's true. And I've been saying this for years. The parents are absolutely horrendous to deal with when it comes to coaching in youth sports and reffing and any of it. They're just terrible to deal with. And and I've always thought for years, like, you're supposed to be setting an example to your kids. When you're in the stands yelling and screaming and cussing at a ref, like, what example are you setting? Like, what are you doing? What makes you think you can behave that way in a public setting and in front of your kids, teaching your kids that's how we're going to treat an official? And then as a coach, how is a coach supposed to teach the kid how to respect an official when his own parent sitting there behind the bench is going on and cussing this dude out? Like, that doesn't fix anything. And I understand. I get it. Youth officials and high school officials are absolutely terrible. I mean, horrible. And you forget how bad they are until you go watch a game. You're like, oh my gosh. I mean, they're horrible. I understand the frustration. Trust me, I do. But let the coach handle that, and the parent, you just support your kid or your kid's team. And we don't need to act like we're the coach in the stands. And that's the other thing. I will not go behind another coach's back. When my oldest son got older and got into middle school and high school sports, it's just what it is. Like, okay, I'm not the coach. And whether I agreed or disagreed, I'm not the coach. You listen to your coach. You have respect for your coach. Just because it's not me doesn't mean you don't respect him. You need to have respect for your coach. and I'm not gonna sit there and cut his legs out from underneath him. Now, did he do some things that I would have done differently? Absolutely. So be it. I'm not Phil Jackson, right? I'm not okay. Who are you? You know, like, it's okay. So it all stems back. It all circles back to the parents, though. And so if your child's in sports and you're listening to this, let's take a look in the mirror and let's think about, how do we treat our child's coaches? How do we treat the officials when we're at the games? How do we interact? Because honestly, as a parent, you should be their number one fan in the stands. And then when they're not in the stands and you're not at practice, you should be making sure they're working on sports. That's my biggest rule with our son is, yeah, you can play, but you're going to play and you're going to work on it, and you're going to work on it outside of practice. And you're going to put your effort, and you're going to put your heart and your soul into it. That's part of doing the sport. We're not just doing this to take pictures and post them and act like we're God's greatest gift here. We're gonna put in the work, and he knows that. We've made that very clear. And our other son, he lived that, and so we're very competitive, but we're real. Because in life, when you get older, if you're going to do anything, you need to jump with both feet. You do one foot in, it's not going to work well. Like, if you're going to do something, you need to do it, and you learn that through youth sports, or you can learn that through youth sports. I guess it's not the only way, but it is a good opportunity, a good learning opportunity to do it through youth sports. But you should absolutely go all in. If you're going to do something, do it. And I don't do this half in, half out. I don't operate that way. My brain is not wired that way. Either we're going to do this dang thing or we're not doing it at all. And so I teach that to my kids. I try to teach that to any kids that I coach. We're going to do this dang thing. We're going to do it together. All 10 toes down. We're going to do it. So anyways, that is my little segment on youth sports. I would love to see it at some point. I don't know if it ever will, because it's the parents are the issue. It's not the kids, it's the parents. The kids, sometimes they suck to deal with, but usually the kids that suck to deal with, their parents are even worse to deal with. So they go hand in hand. I would like to see it get to a point to where, when kids go play sports, a coach can go coach. A coach can be realistic. A coach can give a kid a humble pie without their parent being all offended. And, if you're a coach, I highly recommend the contract thing. It always worked well for me. I didn't really have a whole lot of issues once I started tossing that contract out there and making them sign it. Um, One of the biggest things for me was, I'm strict. I'm a hard-nosed coach. We're going to compete. We're going to go after it. And I'm going to hold you accountable. And my number one rule is, if you're trying and you're giving 100% effort and you make a mistake, I'll never yell at you. I can live with that. I expect you to make a mistake. But if you make a mistake and you're not trying, we are going to have a problem. We're going to have a big problem. There were times, I broke clipboards, markers, I like I said, I get after it, and I get after them. And so I needed parents that were going to sit there and come after me after a game because they thought I was talking to their kid a certain way, or, whatever the case. No, I'm not doing that. If I'm going after your kid a certain way, there's a specific reason. Okay, I'm not just doing it. And so if you're a coach, I highly recommend the contract, because that was all in the contract too. Like, I custom made it. You can just go to Google Forms or whatever and type it in, and it'll make it for you. You can just print them out. Highly recommend. Anyways, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I know it's going to be cold. Hopefully it starts warming up here soon. Hopefully you guys are staying warm. I know there's so many people without power. I've been praying for you guys. Hopefully you guys are staying warm. I know people are dying because of it. So I just pray that people get to warming centers. If you can help. If you have an extra coat, gloves, thick socks, things like that, you can donate them. Beanie hats, hoodies, blankets. Just please, I urge you guys to go donate and try to help our fellow Americans get through this cold spell of the winter time. And I know brighter, warmer days are ahead of us, but we got to get there. And so let's all get there together, and let's help each other out. And if you're shopping in the grocery store, let's buy enough for your family. Let's leave enough for the next family. Let's have some thought, and not just be so selfish and buy all the stuff off the shelves at the store. Other families have to eat too. Other families have to have things to drink too. So let's let's be thoughtful, let's be mindful as we go through this cold spell in the winter time, and let's have a wonderful, tremendous week, and let's have an awesome February. And thank you guys for tuning in. Take care of yourself, take care of your family, stay disciplined. God bless.